thought Phil was in here. He must be out. Phil? Phil, do you remember we've got to do that talk? We've got to do the kids' talk for Sunday, do you remember?
Oh man, Neil, listen, I've got to go. It's been good chatting, but I've got to go and do the recording for the kids' talk in church for church on Sunday. Can we do this again, perhaps next Tuesday? Brilliant. All right, I'll speak to you then. Cheers, mate. Sorry about that, but Neil, he rang. It's for a little bit of a chat. Haven't spoken to him for quite a while, but it's been good to talk to him. You know, it is good, isn't it, to talk to our friends. It's a good way of encouraging one another. Now, did you know that the average person says between 7,000 and 10,000 words every day? And if you think that's a lot, apparently some people speak up to 20,000 words every day. Maybe you know someone who just never seems to stop talking. Well, let's think about you for a moment. Just suppose somebody put a microphone on you and recorded every single word you spoke in a single day. And at the end of the day, they sat you down with a big piece of paper in 2 columns. And on one column, you had to write down all the nice things that you'd said as you listened to yourself. All the nice things, all the kind things, all the positive things. And in the other column, you wrote down all the horrible, nasty, negative, mean, angry things that you'd said. Which column would be the longest? And if you thought that was a bad enough exercise, next thing, they brought your mum and dad in, sat them down, and then they listened to the whole tape all the way through. How embarrassed might you be listening to all the things that you'd said? It's a horrible thought, isn't it? Well, over the last few weeks, we have been reading Paul's letter to his friends in the church in a city called Ephesus. And in that letter, Paul has been reminding his Christian friends of how great God is and how much God loves them and what God has done for them so that they can be his friends. And Paul has been reminding them how they ought to be living as Christians. If you're a friend of Jesus, he said, this is how you should be living. Now, last week, Rosemary, she very helpfully reminded us that we need new wellies.
No, Phil, that wasn't the point of the talk. No, you weren't listening correctly.
Oh, sorry, you're right, thanks, Sarah. Rosemary used Wellington boots to remind us that we need to get rid of our old self and put on our new self. In other words, we need to be living differently to how we were living before we became a Christian, and we need to be living differently to our non-Christian friends. And in the passage this morning, Paul focuses in on a few areas of our lives that might need to change. And one of them, can you guess what it is? Of course you can. It's the things that we say. In that passage, I'm going to open it up here. It says, Paul says this. He says, you should not tell lies. Instead, you need to speak the truth. He then says, don't use your anger as an excuse to say horrible things. Perhaps you know this situation where perhaps your brother or sister has been playing on the computer and they won't let you use it. And you get so annoyed that you start shouting a little bit and you go to mum and dad and start making up stories about how horrible your brother or sister is and how mean they are. And maybe you exaggerate and tell a few lies along the way. Paul says, don't do that. And then Paul goes on and says, don't slander one another. That word simply means don't gossip about other people. Don't repeat things that you hear about somebody, even if they're true. Just keep them to yourself. Don't say things that are going to run someone down and make them feel bad or make them feel sad if they hear about it. Instead, says Paul, be kind, be compassionate, be forgiving in the things that you say. The verse right at the heart of our passage, I think, is really helpful. It helps me as I try and think about the things that I say. Paul says this, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. Well, things that are wholesome are good and nourishing and are good for, they help us grow into healthy people if we're thinking about food. Paul says the same is true in our words. we should be saying things that are wholesome and are going to help people grow in their Christian lives. Nothing unwholesome. No swear words, no crude language, no nastiness, just nice things. That's what he says we should be doing. How do we do it? Well, we can obviously pray and ask God to help us. But the second thing we can do as well is to think before we speak. To think. Now, think is spelled T-H-I-N-K, isn't it? Let's ask ourselves some questions. Is what I'm about to say true? T. Is it true? If it's not true, I'm not going to say it. Think. T-H. Is what I'm about to say helpful? If it's not going to help someone be a better person, if it's not going to help someone grow in their knowledge of Jesus, maybe I shouldn't say it. Is it I? Is it inspirational? That's a big word. Is it going to help someone think great things about Jesus? Is it going to help someone learn more about Jesus? Well, if it's not, maybe it doesn't need to be said. Is it N? Is it necessary? Do I really need to say this? So many people just speak and babble on. Maybe I don't need to say this. And lastly, K, is it kind? Is what I'm about to say going to help someone feel good? Maybe they're feeling sad. Is it going to make them feel happy again? Maybe they're a bit anxious. Is it going to calm them down? Is what I'm about to say kind? True, helpful, inspirational, necessary, kind? Think before you speak.